Antelope are unique because they have that 8-power eye. They are more nervous when it's overcast because they can't see so well.
I honestly look around like I don't even care that they're right there. And they seem to not care that you're there.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Vortex Nation podcast. Got a good one for you. I'm joined by Brandon Mason and Ike Eastman from Eastmans. We're down here at the Western Hunting Conservation Expo, guys. It's one of the few times of year, like I feel like I always get to see you guys here. It's like It's like a reunion. We've been podcasting with a lot of great folks, and you guys included right now. And we're going to talk about a subject that I know you guys are incredibly familiar with. And oftentimes, as a hunting opportunity or a species gets overlooked and for absolutely no good reason, and we're talking antelope, also called pronghorn. I know we might get a comment, somebody, well, it's not technically. Yeah. So for all you pronghorn folks out there, we'll get that in there for you. But guys, welcome. I'm super pumped to see you and chat about this incredible species that is so fun to hunt.
Well, thanks for having us, Mark. You're right. Antelope hunting is one of my, it was the first big game animal I ever took, and it's one of my passions. And it's a cool species because you can hunt them. It's a great hunt for kids, and we'll talk about why. And it's also a great hunt once you start winding down your career because it's not as physical as some, a backcountry mule deer hunt. But it is good to see you. Thanks for having us on again. And your marketing team will love this. It's my birthday today.
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, darn it. I was going to say happy birthday.
It's a perpetual joke.
Yeah. Sawyer from your team constantly sends me notes. Hey, did you check out the new what's blah, blah, blah? And yeah, happy birthday. My birthday's every day, apparently.
We're always celebrating you, Ike. And actually, I should back up a second for those, and I'd say it's probably highly unlikely if you're into hunting and in the hunting space that guys or folks out there aren't familiar with you. Just give us a brief background of who you are and what Eastman's is up to. And actually, I was chatting with Brandon a little bit earlier today. You guys are up to a lot, and even a few things I didn't know about.
Yeah, you'll have to share those. Maybe I don't know about them, Brandon.
Oh, by the way, we started this
yesterday. So we're a Western hunting company. Been doing it longer than anybody. 1957, my grandfather started filming wildlife, and we've grown it to 2 major magazines, the Hunting Journal, which is our rifle side, and the Bow Hunting Journal is the bow side. We have 6 podcasts from Predator Pros to Eastman's Elevated to Life of a Bow Hunter to Western Huntsman, which is kind of a hunting lifestyle. My podcast, which is Eastman's Eastman's Journal podcast edition, where I get to interview cool people like you and just find out who they are and the backstory. I need to get you on mine, actually.
Dude, let's do it.
Yeah.
It might not be that cool, but...
yeah, I think it would be. As much as I know about you.
We'll make an exception in this case.
And then we have digital series, Beyond the Grades on YouTube, Wingman, a Wingman podcast, and a Wingman YouTube series, which is all wing shooting stuff out west. And then, of course, the Eastman's Hunting TV, which has been on the Outdoor Channel since 1998, I think.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's a long time. It's a really long time. So it's all Western stuff, Western big game stuff. We're going to talk about antelope. My dad, Mike Eastman, wrote 3 books, actually 4 books. He wrote an elk book. It's like a how-to elk hunting textbook, but it's written for everyone that is from zero to somebody that's been hunting elk a long time. You'll get a ton of tips from somebody that did it for a really long time. He wrote 2 mule deer books. One of them's called High Country Mule Deer Hunting. The other one's called Mule Deer Tactics. And then the one we're going to talk about today, which is trophy antelope hunting, or trophy hunting antelope. And his passion has been antelope for a long, long time. And he really took it to another level. He killed a Boone and Crockett antelope in Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado, amongst others. But that was like his pinnacle goal, is to do one in every state. A little known fact about antelope is there's only about, I think there's 800,000 antelope across the plains. 450,000 of them live in the state of Wyoming, which is where we're from. So target-rich environment where we live, but it's a little different because they're hard. The tags are a little bit harder to draw for resident. Non-resident, there's places that are over the counter almost. I mean, they call them leftover tags. And it's a fun hunt because it's not physical. It's not, you can drive around. we teasingly, you know how you have the sheep shape guys and, you know, I'm trying to get in shape for elk hunting. We call it antelope shape, which is really just Twinkies and beer.
Yeah.
Gas station hot dogs, stuff like that.
Because you have to cover a lot of country, and to do it on foot is almost impossible. If you're looking for, you can just shoot an antelope, but if you're looking for something that's, you know, the pinnacle, the 200-inch mule deer, if you think that's the pinnacle, an antelope, it's an 80-inch antelope. So, yeah, I don't know where you want to start. I'll just tell Brandon's funny story.
Yeah, apparently there's dirt on me that I don't know about, so I don't remember.
Well, we were talking before the podcast about the slow roll. Antelope hunting, antelope are really curious. And you typically, they don't mind vehicles because they you'll find antelope by highways just laying there watching cars go by. I believe it's because they like speed, because they're the fastest land mammal in North America.
Yeah,
I have clocked them running in the borrow pit next to my pickup doing 60 miles an hour, and in one fell swoop, dive under a fence, jump up, and never missed a beat. 60 miles an hour again, 0 to 60, just like that. Now, there's a couple things about them. They have their windpipe is twice the size of any ungulate for their body weight, so they can really suck the air in. Mm-hmm. And they have a larger adrenaline gland than they're supposed to for their size, so they can run, and their heart's extended and their lungs are extended sizes, so they can run that speed for really long. So if you wound one, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I know even folks that have made like really good behind the shoulder long shots, and they're like, how is that thing running so far? And it's a great shot. The animal's going to die. It's going to expire quickly, but it's just, I mean, they are really, really cool. They're a uniquely, American Western animal. Their markings are incredibly striking. Their black horns are just, stand off. It's just, they are an incredibly cool animal. And like you said, in a state like Wyoming, and numbers are generally such, we had a little bit, actually we talked about this the last time we talked, a little bit of a setback the winter of 23. Maybe that's something we'll touch on a little bit today, where we're at today. But an incredibly fun animal to chase. Like you said, you can probably make it as hard as you want to. If you're really looking for an exceptional buck, that's going to be a little bit harder. You might have to cover more country in your vehicle or on foot. I mean, heck, I know I've hiked several miles while antelope hunting before, and part of that's just exploring a little bit too. It's fun. Generally, lots of opportunities. So if you do want to be a little picky, you don't necessarily have that pressure of, I hope I get my one opportunity this week, right, and if I blow it, that's it. So a little bit less pressure there. Really good group hunt if you want to have a camp. Like, I've only antelope hunted a handful of times, and it's one of those things where I go, why don't I do this every year? Like, or if I could, if you could draw a tag or have that opportunity, because there is just something absolutely special about them, including, how good they eat.
I'll let Brandon talk about that because I'm not a huge fan of eating them. We make ours in all the jerky, but I've had good ones. It's just all about how you deal with the animal in the field, because typically when you're antelope hunting, they drop their sheaths in November, and so you're hunting them in September and October, mm-hmm. Which in Wyoming it can be 95 degrees. I've hunted them in 100-degree weather. And I've also hunted them in the snow, but you got to deal with them properly. I know, Brandon, how do you deal with them? What's your suggested way? Because I know antelope is your family's favorite mm-hmm. meat out of all the stuff.
Well, like you said, it's usually warmer, especially then you think of like a traditional November deer season where you can drive around with that thing in the back of the pickup and it freezes, right? It's
right.
fine.
You can go to the bar and show it off. It's fine.
Yeah. And you see people do that with antelope sometimes, and it's 95 degrees, and then they complain about how terrible it tastes. And
right.
I had an old guy one time tell me, well, if you think about it, if you drove to the grocery store in the middle of summer and bought a couple pounds of hamburger and threw it in the back of your truck for the weekend and let dust and everything in the heat, get to it, and then you took it home and ate it, it would probably taste pretty terrible. And he said, my rule of thumb is if you treat it like meat, it's probably going to taste like meat. It's going to be good. And so I had an uncle that started antelope hunting before I ever did, and he cooked up some antelope in hunting camp one time, deer camp, and he's like, I've got some antelope, and we're like, oh, man, I've heard nothing but bad things. They taste terrible. They stink, everything. And it was the best steak we had ever eaten. And we're like, are you sure this is antelope? Are you sure? And he told us that the key was as soon as you can, get it in a cooler on ice. Not freeze it necessarily, but get it cooled down as soon as you can. Get the hide off and get it on ice. And we've followed that ever since, now for 20-some years, and it's phenomenal whenever we do it that way. So, it's our family's favorite meat that we've ever taken. So,
yeah, I mean, we're probably going to talk a little bit about equipment on this podcast, I'm sure, but a critical piece of equipment is going to be a high-quality cooler that's going to keep ice for a long time. And then, like you said, if you can get that animal out of the field, cut up, hide off, and cooled off, you're going to have in my opinion, some of the best wild game going. And I was in the same boat as you. Like, I'd always wanted to hunt one, finally got the opportunity, had to, put in for, I think I drew it on my third year of putting in. And I was like, well, now I got this darn thing. All I've heard is horrible things about it. But I was able to get it cooled off because, again, that's kind of all I knew. It's like, hey, let's treat it like meat. It's warm out. We got to get this thing cooled off, and we had all the stuff to do that. I cooked some steaks, and I was like, well, I kind of wanted to see it in its simplest form, right?
Not seasoned up or anything.
Just a salt and pepper type steak. And I was like, oh, my gosh.
Yep.
Like, it was phenomenal.
The first one that I shot, it was right after I first got married, and my wife likes wild game and everything, but we grilled up some antelope meat, and she said, she was going on and on about how good it was, and she said, man, it's too bad you can't go to another state and do this too so we can get more. I'm like, I can.
Right.
So
did I just get permission to go to Wyoming?
Let's talk about that. So now I live in Wyoming, so I get to do it pretty often, but at that time I lived in a state where there was antelope, but it was pretty tough to draw, the tags and everything. So it was like once every several years you might get a tag. So then I started hunting in Wyoming, and then eventually got a job with the Eastmans, and now get to do it almost every year. So it's fun.
You could take. We have leftover antelope doe tags, especially on crop fields. You could take 2 or 3 antelope a year if you wanted to, if that was if you're into that.
If you're into that sort of thing, which I am. Yeah. That is an incredible thing, though. You think, and again, depending on the unit, depending on where tag allotment is at, that's going to ebb and flow a little bit. But there is potential where you might be able to take more than one animal on a hunt, and that kind of, you double down on coming back with some really, really good, good meat.
It's also a really good entry to, if you're not a Western hunter, if you're not, you haven't hunted out west much, or you want to start doing that and figuring out places. Antelope and mule deer do cohabitate in very similar places, and so it's a great entry level into hunting out west, because, like I said, the weather's not bad. It's it's a great group hunt. You can take campers out there or tents out there, and you set up a tent in a camp, and it's a lot of fun. There's some of the adversities. You do have rattlesnakes, and almost all of it you have to deal with that. But antelope are really fun. Now we'll talk about gear, or let's talk about why first. Antelope are unique because how you score them, how you field judge them is really hard, because you're talking 80 inches. So it's 80 inches is that benchmark of a true trophy, mature buck. That's 40 inches per side. They're not a horned animal. They do actually slough those in November. They come off and then they grow again. People say, "Oh, it's hair." It's not. It's like your fingernail. They have pedicles just like an elk and deer, but deer, 40 inches on the side. You're only talking. There's 6 measurements on each one. It's mass measurements. So you break the horn into fourths. And mass measurements, you measure their prong, which is you also hear them called diggers. You measure from the back of the horn all the way to the tip of that prong, and then you measure the length. That's it. And so, 1 inch on each one of those measurements can completely change the score of that antelope. So field judging them can be difficult, but there's a couple. I'm going to give you a couple tips on how to do that. You'll see a ton of bucks, right? And mass, you want their mass to be the size of their eye. If you look out there and their eye is their horn is as wide as their eye is, that's a massive buck.
And they do have big eyes.
Yeah, they have an 8-power eye.
Yeah.
No kidding, 8 power. And the way that their eyes, I mean, I can go on about cool things about antelope forever, but their eyes, they can't see straight in front of them because their eyes are on the side of their head, which also gives them horrible depth perception. So one of the stalking techniques that my dad talks about in his book is never walk straight at them because they'll always look at you sideways. If you kind of diagonal them and get closer and closer and closer, they can't tell you're getting closer. They have no idea. Well, think about it. If all you did is look through one side of your Vortex binoculars, you can't tell depth because you get depth by your brain measuring distance between your two eyes. Well, if you didn't have that, you have no depth perception. So you can get really close to an antelope before they spook. The other thing is they're really curious. Mm-hmm. So this brings up this story. I'm going to tell Brandon.
I'm so nervous right now.
Are those beads of sweat?
We have a thing. A lot of antelope hang out in oil fields, especially in Wyoming. And so they're used to traffic. Well, if you stop a vehicle and then get out of the vehicle, that's rare for them. And all of a sudden you become a predator at that point, and then they freak out. But if you just slow roll and drive up and slow roll and a guy gets out, and as the vehicle drives by, you can get 20 yards and shoot one with a bow, can't you, Brandon?
Well, and even taking it a step further, I've learned that the sneakier you act, because here's the ultimate sneaky move, right? Right. Now all of a sudden I'm invisible.
I don't have a
head. Yeah. But they sense that predatory movement and posturing and everything, just like as if a coyote, a mountain lion, whatever predator is going to come after them. And I noticed that through bow hunting antelope, that you're trying to be sneaky and you're sitting around water holes and you're crawling through sagebrush and cactus and everything. And I was about ready to hang it up for this one archery season, and I noticed that every time I would hyper pay attention to one that I'm going after, their heads come up and they're nervous. But it's almost like they take a cue from the brim of your hat too, because they see so many people, that if I honestly look around, like I don't even care that they're right there, and they seem to not care that you're there.
Like if you're not locked in, they're not locked in.
There was one story where my son was videoing a hunt for our TV show, and we were just at our wits' end. We were just like, let's just make a tour through this oil field, and then we're going to head back home. It's just like it was hot, and we're tired, and we tried everything, and it wasn't working. And there was a decent antelope in the road ditch, and I said, let's try something once. I'm going to stop on the other side of the road, and I'm not going to make eye contact with him. You get out of the vehicle and do your thing with the video camera, and I'm going to get my bow out of the back seat, knock an arrow, never make eye contact with him, and walk out, like Ike said, in that diagonal pattern. So he was kind of feeding this way to the left, and I'm going to go diagonally to the right, not make eye contact. And when we first stopped, he kind of looked at us like, oh, what do you guys do? But we never paid attention to him, really, or he didn't think so. And I walked out 40 yards into the sagebrush, and I'm talking to my son the whole time. I was like, hey, let me know. And he's right there. The antelope's right there.
Like 20, 30 yards.
Yeah, like really close. He said, let me know. I said, let me know when you're on him with the camera. He's got it on the tripod and everything.
And you're like talking in a normal voice.
This loud. And I'm knocking an arrow, walking out in the sagebrush, and I get to where I'm, legally off the road and everything so I can shoot. And then where I figured he was still in range. And I'm kind of watching him on the corner of my eye. I figured, he's probably about 40 yards. And I knocked an arrow, and I took my stance like this, and he's standing to my left. And I said, are you on him? He goes, yep, anytime. And I drew back my bow, and that thing looked, because then now I'm looking at him, and he looked up like, oh dear, I'm in serious trouble. And I did. I got him. I shot him. And that's not the only time that's happened.
No,
I've done that multiple times.
I mean, that's interesting too. And it's one of those things where in some way, like it makes a lot of sense, like somewhat of we often think of, like, I'm going to put on the stock. And like you said, I got to be ultra sneaky and stuff like that. And it's like, by not being sneaky, you were being sneaky.
Yeah.
That's counted. I jokingly say all the time that I said, I tell my son, especially before he had a girlfriend or anything, I said, women are just like antelope. the more you pay attention to them, the more you're going to freak them out. As a young man trying to pursue a young woman, right?
Is that why he's engaged at 19?
Yeah, because then he apparently stopped caring, and then now he's going to get married. So maybe that was bad advice. I don't know.
He acted like he didn't care a little too much.
Yeah.
No,
but it is true, and sometimes that's even good advice for elk and deer. Not as religiously as that, but there's because sometimes you're not paying attention and you're hiking through a drainage, and you just stumble upon an animal that seemingly didn't even see you walking,
or heard you.
And then as soon as you act sneaky, they're on you now. So I think as long as it's a natural movement, a lot of times they're not as freaked out about your behavior, and antelope are especially that way.
Yeah, they just see so many people.
I think that applies, to the broader spectrum of game when you're pursuing them in areas where there oftentimes is a high volume of people. Maybe there's a popular hiking trail or something like that. And so seeing people is not out of the ordinary. They're seeing people every single day. Seeing a person go into hunt mode,
right?
That's
weird.
Out of the ordinary.
That's predatory.
That doesn't feel right.
That looks a lot like that mountain lion or that coyote that was chasing me the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you think about it, you see footage of animals too, like say in an agricultural field. I've seen this out west a bunch where there'll be elk or deer feeding out in the field and a grizzly bear out in the field, and they're not even paying attention to each other unless that grizzly bear or mountain lion is acting predatory. Then, of course, they're on high alert and they're out of there, but you'll see them in fields seemingly
cohabitating.
Like no problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird, but it's that predatory behavior that freaks them out. And antelope are just the best example of it. I mean, and it's so consistent. And I think the thing that's weird is, as hunters, part of the fun is putting camo on and
I know
and being sneaky, right? And like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be sneaky. I'm supposed to do the opposite of that, be obnoxious to where they're like, well, that guy can't be coming after me. He's an idiot.
Certainly he's not after me. I mean, look at him. He's like the care in the world.
I can still see his head. He's not even shrunk down.
And obviously, we're talking, this is one tactic. There's definitely going to be a lot of times where being sneaky, putting on a good stalk, using the terrain, staying out of sight, those are going to be your best friend for sure.
Ambushing is the easiest way to kill antelope, for sure. Ambush them. If they're moving, get in front of them and just set up. And I've killed, 20 antelope that way. That's the best way to do it.
Gotcha. So, what does that scenario look like?
Oh, so because antelope rarely, if they lay down, they're in trouble. But rarely do they lay down, and if they're up, they're moving, they're feeding and moving. And if you can just look at the terrain and know, okay, they're gonna stay on this side of that washout, and they're gonna go probably around the end of this because the wind's gonna start blowing in the afternoon, and they'll probably lay on the leeward side of this ridge, and just get in front of them. Some either walk or drive and get in front of them, and then just wait, and they'll walk right past you, and they'll go, I don't remember that rock sitting there. Too late. Boom, done.
The rock's being sneaky.
The rock shoulders just went up.
Yeah. But they're just such a fun animal, and they're unique. I mean, they live in the most extreme conditions in North America. If you think about it, we left the house the other day. It was 21 below zero, right? So they're living at 21. We saw 60 below zero in some of their territories we were driving down here. And then they live at 115 degrees in the summer. That's way more extreme than even the North, even the Arctic. That Arctic doesn't get that much extreme. They're an animal that they have, their hair is hollow, like a polar bear. So they can take extreme cold and extreme heat. The other thing that people don't realize is they can actually move their hair. And
I guess I have seen that, yes.
Yeah, their hind end flares out. That's like their whitetail. When the whitetail throws his flag, that's their whitetail. But they also can move their hair to extract heat in the summer. You'll see them, and they just look puffy. Well, their hair's sticking straight out so that the wind goes through and cools them off, and then they can lay it back down. They're the most unique animal in that sense, and they're prehistoric. They haven't changed. They found antelope skeletons that are like 10,000 years old, and they look the exact same.
That's incredible. I mean, they truly are just their own thing. And I think that's one thing that just makes them so neat.
I think one of the things too that I love, we talked about how it's fun group activity, and it especially for families. You know, if you're trying to get your kids involved in hunting, or like for example, I have one boy and 3 girls, and my boy is wired like me. He wants to go up into the high country and he wants to kill it.
Not anymore. He's got a fiance.
Well, yeah, now he's on other things, but once upon a time he did.
Has anybody broke it to him that it's over?
Yeah,
Not yet.
I was like, gee, those were good days. And my daughters, they hunt, but they don't want to. They're just not hardwired to want to do something that extreme. At least my girls aren't. And but man, they love antelope hunting. It's more social. It's more chill. And if you blow the stock on an antelope, you're probably going to see 50 more that day. Whereas you blow a stock on a high country mule deer, and that's probably your season.
Yeah,
Right.
You're probably done.
Right. Well, yeah. And the
and-
terrain, it's a little, it can be certainly rugged. And I've seen some antelope in kind of some pretty, what I would consider like un-antelope places, but it can be generally a little bit more mild. And like you said, like if you're trying to get your kids into a hunt, pretty active, doesn't have to be insanely physical. Lots of action, right? Like you're seeing lots of animals in general. So really cool. Speaking of seeing animals, what type of terrain is a person going to find these things? Because, I mean, I even ran into this the last time I went antelope hunting. We had tags in a specific unit. I guess I'll give some particulars. It was one of the units that Wyoming puts a warning on, like warning, limited public land,
Eastern Wyoming.
Yeah. Have permission before you come out here and hunt, because you're just likely not going to find any place to hunt. Anyway, where I was going with that, though, is I don't know.
So what you want to focus on water.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Antelope have to have a water.
Okay, I'm gonna.
He's back in
found
the zone.
I found it.
Oh, there it is. That's a sign of age, Mark.
So I was scouting and I was looking at public land. I'm like, okay, we can go here, and the contour lines didn't look like super extreme in the grand scheme of things, but there were definitely pieces of public land that didn't hold antelope. So what type of terrain? What type of what does prime antelope country look like?
So it depends on the season and it depends on the area. But antelope, I mean, they need water. Everything needs water. And when you're hunting in antelope country, which is arid desert type country,
Okay.
Focus on water. And if you pull up your Onyx and you can't, you go to 5 or 6, what looks like on a map, there's water, and you walk up there and they're dry. Those antelope, they're gone because they're used to water in there. And there might be water in there in May and June, but there's not water in there where you're hunting. They're not going to be in there. The other thing you need to focus on is sagebrush. They have a unique dietary system that allows them to eat sagebrush all throughout. That's also why people are like, oh, my antelope tasted like sagebrush. Well, their stomach allows them to eat that sagebrush throughout the different growing seasons. The other thing is the antelope are migratory. And so one of our tactics that I use in one of the areas I hunt a lot, and I've been hunting since I was 14, there's a huge mountain range that these antelope live in, but it's all private land. I can't hunt up there. But when the first snow flies, those antelope come down off of that, and they winter in this one area. Well, it's usually about the 15th of October, and the season closes the end of October. So I'll hunt the last week or last 2 weeks of October because that's my chance of finding the biggest antelope. However, to caveat that, if you do that strategy and you find a big antelope, shoot it, because you probably won't see him again because he's in migratory mood. You won't come back tomorrow and he'll be there. You won't come back this afternoon and him be there. He's moving somewhere.
Yeah, it shuffles the whole deck. Early season to late season antelope, especially next to the high country like that, there'll be a whole new crop of animals. And like you said, you'll be like, oh, we'll come back and check on him tomorrow.
Gone.
Not late season. He'll be gone. Probably.
And earlier in the season, that is oftentimes something you can do if, depending on pressure and other hunters.
Well, they're very territorial. So during the rut, which is September, the month of September, they rut, and they're really aggressive. I call them, they're the small man. They have the small man syndrome. Seriously, they're really aggressive. And if you ever see one of their fights, it's a good thing they don't have more than 80 inches of horn because they kill each other, literally. But they're during the rut, they're very territorial, and they'll have an area that a buck won't leave. And he gets does in there, and he won't let them leave either. So, if you're hunting in September, early October, you find a buck, he'll always be there. That buck he won't leave. Even if his does get taken by another buck, he won't leave. And they have scrapes just like whitetail do. They do the whole thing.
It's like there's an underground fence, like a dog with a collar on and an electric fence underground, because they'll be going to wide open BLM land. There's no fences or anything, and they'll come to a screeching halt in the middle of a pasture and go right and go this way. It's like there's this little quadrant, and they're not going to leave it.
Is that like when I've seen bucks run other bucks off, and they are just going full tilt, and it is like, are they hitting that imaginary fence? Like, boom, okay, and then I go back.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a bunch of antelope because of they run. I could go on forever, but if you look at an antelope, they don't have, how deer and stuff, they have that forearm. They have this muscle. Antelope don't. Did you know that?
I guess it's been a while since I've taken one apart, but
it's all tendon, which allows them to stretch out and run so fast. Also doesn't give them fatigue because those instead of small muscles, they're big muscles, big snap muscles. The other thing that is unique about them is during the rut is if you bump a buck, because they're territorial, if you get up there and blow a stalk, don't leave. Stay there. More than once. In fact, the biggest antelope I ever shot, 82-inch antelope, my dad and I were sneaking along in a white Jeep Wrangler, and come up over this hill, and we bump him. We knew that he was in here, but we bumped the antelope 30 yards from us. And so we just sat there, and they ran out 5 miles. And of course, if you have good glass, you can see and you can watch them. They ran out 5 miles. Yeah. You know somebody who makes some good antelope glass? They run out 5 miles, and within 2 hours, they were 60 yards from where we bumped them. And we just sat there for 2 hours and watched them. And they ran and they stop and they feed, and then they'd run and stop and feed. And 2 hours later, I shot this buck at 120 yards.
I did not know we were going to cover rabbit tactics for antelope.
Yeah, pretty much. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Heck? I had not heard that one before. That is really neat. And talk about that's a game-changing move, I should say. If oftentimes you bump something, and a lot of it, not always, and there's different tactics to deal with that for whitetails and everything. But a lot of times you're like, it's discouraging. Like, it's over. I screwed it up. Let's go find another one. But boy, if that was a buck that you would really like to go after, that's an interesting move.
Just think about it. If you were in your house, some guy walks in and scares you out of your living room, and you had a very short memory. Pretty soon you go in the kitchen, you're like, I'm going to grab a beer. It's like 8 o'clock. I should go watch some TV and go sit down back in your living room. It's the same thing. Those antelope want to be wherever they were, especially if it's in the middle of the day, because that's the leeward side. They're out of the wind, or they're in the wind, depending on the heat. They wanted to be there anyway. You just have to wait till they come back because they're not leaving the house.
And like you said earlier, they're so curious. It's almost comical because I don't think this was legal to do at the time, but I know of a guy, wasn't me, but I know of a guy.
That's the one I was going to tell. No.
Yeah. Back in the CB days, everybody had those big, tall antennas on top of their vehicle. And I knew a guy that was a good bow hunter, and he would tie a white handkerchief to the top of his antenna, and he would be right below, like on a 2-track or whatever, right below the rise where you'd see some antelope, and he'd pull that antenna down with a white handkerchief, and the thing would go like this. And so the antelope would see that white handkerchief waving like that, and they call that flagging for antelope back in the day, which was illegal. And
because it worked every time.
It worked every time. They would see that over there, and they would come screaming over, and he'd be waiting there with an arrow nocked, and he's got like 6 or 8 pope and young antelope, and most of them are killed doing that.
Well, it's when they flare their white butts. That's their get out of Dodge sign to everything else.
I know
thing.
A different guy who shot, I think at one time it may still be, I haven't looked, but it was top 20 pope and young antelope in the world. Giant antelope that he hadn't seen before showed up, and he was bow hunting, and he always kept one white fletching on his arrows, and same thing, he would sneak up to where they couldn't see him, and he would hold that arrow like this, spin the broadhead, and you just spin that arrow like this, and that white fletching would be going around, and that's how he killed that antelope. That thing saw that white, was curious, and came over and he shot it.
Yeah, that's why I wear over whites. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
So,
just for
again-
mountain goat hunting, apparently.
There's
Right.
some states where it's incredibly illegal to do that because of the effectiveness. It's almost like cheating. But it's just to the point that they're really curious animals. And sometimes I think we always say they're the smartest dumb animals I've ever hunted, because you're like, do they do that weird stuff because they're that smart, or are they that dumb?
Right.
I don't know what the answer is. Some days, it depends on the day and my frustration level with hunting them. But
And they're very vocal. They talk to each other a lot, and people don't realize that either. They wheeze and blow, and they have a sign. You know, you'll hear them. And there's a couple signs you're like, well, this is done. He knows we're here, we're out.
Yep.
You know, when he wheezes at you.
So yeah,
Blows.
and it's always hard to do, like, you know, because we're not antelope. But like, what are some of those sounds, and what do they mean? Because I know I've heard some of them when I'm out there. Generally, I think it's a gig is up sort of thing. But
If you could just think of air going through nostrils really fast, it's like, that's, I know you're there. Good luck.
okay,
And then when they talk to each other, they sound a lot like deer. They I guess it'd be
kind of like a bleat.
yeah, like a bleat sound. And it's a lot of the does talking to the fawns. Bucks do it a little bit, but there's a guy that my dad had on some of his old videos back in the 90s that actually developed an antelope call, and he was good at it. He could get antelope coming miles away with a call. And I don't even know if you can buy those things anymore. It was called a Calls-ma-all.
I think you can still buy them online, honestly. It's called a Calls 'em all game call. Yeah.
And it works beautifully if you know how to do it.
interesting, very
Yeah.
cool.
And then they'll do that little bit of a chuckle at
Yep.
the end of that wheeze noise that they make. Sometimes it's even like just a communication. I was watching the biggest bodied antelope I'd ever seen. He was an okay horned buck. He was just kind of average, but huge head on him, and just almost looked like a big mule deer, really, laying there. And he had a whole harem of does, and they're all bedded down in this little bit of a draw. And we were up on top of this ridge, kind of through the sagebrush, just watching them. And every time another buck would even come walking close to that herd, this buck was so lazy and so fat. He'd lay there, and he wouldn't even do the whole wheeze thing. He would just, you could see his cheeks puff up when he'd do this. We were laughing. He'd go, like, go away.
I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
Don't make me get up.
And he was the dominant buck, even though he wasn't the biggest horn buck, but he was by far the oldest, and he had control of that whole area. And every time he would even moderately kind of chuckle at those other bucks, they were like, "Whoop, Frank's mad. I'm out of here."
Yeah, not worth it. Not
That's
worth it.
too funny. You guys, you talked a little bit about, you know, their curiosity and their territorial nature. Now, this would probably be, I would say it definitely would be more of an archery tactic. But what about decoying?
It works. It works great. My dad shot his Pope and Young antelope with a stick bow using a plastic decoy. Now, there's a couple struggles. One of them is you're in the desert, so don't think you're going to get a decoy and then go set it out there and stake it into the ground and walk away, because the ground's really hard and the wind's constantly blowing, so they always tip over. But there's a couple manufacturers. What's Danny's company? Predator decoys, I think.
No.
You know Danny from
Danny
OSG.
Ferris.
Danny Ferris from OSG. He's got these decoys that you can mount to the front of your bow.
Was that the heads-up decoy?
I think
No, is there heads up?
No, there's heads up decoy, which is similar, but they're. I'll look it up while we're talking. I gotta
anyway,
look it
some
up
of the
since we
more-
mentioned it.
Some of the more,
But
I
it-
guess, mobile ones that I've seen are like the heads-up Montana decoy.
Yeah. But this one mounts to the front, like to your stabilizer, and then it has a slit in it, so you can shoot through it.
Oh, I've
shoot
seen those,
through
yep.
those, and it's just an antelope. They work unbelievably, because they look at, antelope looks and goes, I don't recognize that antelope, but that's okay. It keeps getting closer and closer. I've never had success with this, and I have no idea why. I've tried it multiple times, trying to just use a bovine cow, because they're out there feeding with cows. You'd think they wouldn't care. No, I've never had it work. But antelope decoys, them looking at another antelope, it works pretty good.
Yeah, I would think that would be something. Oftentimes, as it relates to hunting, we talk about practicing with your equipment, and attaching something like that to your bow would be something you would want to practice with. Because one thing that I know that I've encountered
Stalker
in the
decoys,
West, stalker. Okay, yep, is a wind. So at least with some of those things that I've seen, it could be somewhat the equivalent of attaching a sail to your bow.
Yeah, pretty soon your bow's out there vibrating with the wind.
One thing that I thought was interesting, Danny had sent me some of these to test once, and it messes a little bit with your depth perception initially, because you should practice with them on for sure, because you're used to seeing a wide open picture. Now you're looking through a little window of this decoy. You can get away with more movement, which is nice, and they're pretty realistic looking. But one thing I found, and I think this would go for anybody shooting, sights or no sights, but I shoot instinctively with my bow, and I usually would shoot with two eyes open. And because of the way that bow or the decoy set up on the bow, I couldn't see very good. Like I'd have a line in my vision, right? Because I would have both eyes open. So I would close one eye just like I'm shooting with a rifle, and my groups tightened up. My accuracy.
It did?
Yeah. So now, most of the time I don't have a decoy on my bow. And ever since I was practicing with that, I think for turkey season one year or something, I now shoot 100% of the time with my left eye closed, just like I'm shooting for a rifle. My group's tightened up.
No kidding, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know he shoots without a sight?
Wait, with your compound?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
He's a weirdo.
I'm special.
And I'd love to say he's not good with, or it's a horrible idea, but he actually is pretty good at it. I've seen him at TAC events nail targets at 95 yards.
I wouldn't say you should bet on me to do that, but it's possible once in a while.
Man,
to get lucky.
I rely on you guys for a lot of tips. I don't know if I'm going to try that one.
Well, and how that, not to get too much in the weeds on that topic, but it's amazing how curious it makes people when this topic comes up.
Oh, yeah.
People that are in the hunting industry or not. And the reason why I did it was when I started bow hunting when I was a teenager, I started with the whole sights and trying to dial in and all that. And for some reason, I couldn't be consistent. I think my form and my whole shooting cycle wasn't dialed yet. And I was really frustrated. And so I took the sights off because I saw a guy at our local archery range shooting instinctively with a compound when I was probably like 16 maybe. And I have still to this day never seen anybody shoot a bow like that. I don't know who this guy was. I saw him one time at the range. I think he was passing through town or something. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. He was breaking knocks off his arrows constantly. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, I want to shoot like that guy. And I like the simplicity of it because there's one less thing to go wrong in the field. And then when I started working at Eastman's and all this new technologies at our fingertips all the time. We're testing everything. I'm like, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to put the newest, best sight on the market on my bow, and I'm going to do that. And I did that for one hunting season, and I shot it okay. But for hunting, like I told my wife, I said I felt like a dog with a muzzle on it. And because one day I was home shooting, and I got sick and tired of the sight. I took it off. I just went back shooting instinctive, and I was having fun again. And I don't know why. I don't like putting a sight on my bow. I don't know why.
The other interesting thing, this isn't going to sell a lot of rangefinders here, but you don't have to use a rangefinder either. In fact, if you do, it's bad.
Yeah, because the whole point of instinctive shooting, besides simplicity of gear, is that it's kind of like learning to throw a baseball. When you're a little kid, it takes you a while to understand how hard to throw things and develop your form and all that. But, when you're our age, you don't think of how do I line up to throw this baseball and do I need a rangefinder to tell me it's 30 yards versus 50? No, I know how far or how hard to throw the ball. And for some reason, if I range a target, I use rangefinder for rifle hunting, but for bow hunting, if I range a target and I know, say, it's 30 yards, I will overthink it and I will miss. And I've proved it time and time again. In fact, that story that I talked about, one of the stories of just getting out of the vehicle and not acting like you cared about the antelope and then you ended up shooting him, the one I told already, that was about a 40-yard shot. But earlier in the season, I think it was the year before, I had pre-ranged a bunch of, sagebrush plants or whatever around a water hole. We were sitting there, and a buck came in at 30 yards, and I knew what the distance was, and I overthought it, and I shot right over his back, and I missed. And we had a perfect video sequence. My son was videoing and everything, and I blew it. Well, like a week later, we were out, and there was a buck antelope that wasn't too far from the vehicle, and we did the whole thing. That was when I was really starting to piece it together, like, don't pay attention to him really. And I went to go range it, and I'm like, nope, last time I ranged it, I missed. And so I just pulled back and shot, because I'm like, well, I can totally hit that buck. I knew I could. And I shot him right through the heart. He ran like 75 yards and piled up. And this is an episode on our show. And I ranged it after the fact, and it was 56 yards. And if I would have known it was 56 yards, I wouldn't have shot. And I probably would have missed if I would have shot. So I can't explain it, but for me, it's really freeing that I've been shooting instinctively since I was 16. And so it's a lot of years of just thousands of arrows of knowing kind of where to shoot, and for me, it's just more fun. It's more fun. It's simpler, which is why I do it. I'm not trying to prove anything. It's just, I'm a worse archer with a sight on.
Right.
So.
And I mean, and that goes back to, do what's right for you. Whatever works for you is whatever works for you.
Yeah. And we tease each other at the office, because obviously I'm the only one that's not using a sight. And we've got some really good bow hunters on staff, Dan Picar and Brian Barney and some others. And Dan and I are ribbing each other constantly. I tell him he's cheating because he puts a sight on his bow and stuff like that. Granted, he kills a lot more animals with a bow than I do, though.
Wait a minute.
Measurably more than I do.
Common denominator. Sight, lots of animals. Got it. Okay.
Well, I mean, while we're on the topic of archery, we covered, decoys, bows, people who go against the grain with no sights. But what about, maybe even some early season stuff like earlier you mentioned water. That can be a key early season tactic, or really an anytime tactic, because they do need it. But I know some guys will set water.
Mm-hmm. And can I bring something up real quick before I forget on that? So that antelope that I said I missed at 30 yards over a water hole, what I learned in bringing this topic back to decoy use too, is sometimes we think decoy use when I'm stalking in, that whole thing, or whether it's on your bow or a decoy that you're staking out. But what I found is that antelope they're very sensitive to movement, and they'll pick up on your movement, especially trying to draw a bow at close range. So what we started doing is I would set up, we were using some Montana decoys one year, and we put some doe antelope decoys down by the water's edge, and then we set back to kind of do the whole intercepting. So it's like all the tactics coming into one besides stalking. And we sat back in some brush, and this antelope buck came running in, and he saw us sitting there, but he was really interested in those ladies that were down by the water. And so he looked over at us for a second, but he kept doing this number and looking back at them. And then I drew back, and I missed him because I shot right over top of him, but I had a perfect 30-yard broadside shot, and he didn't really care.
That wouldn't happen.
I think a sight would have maybe,
Sight and a rangefinder would have definitely alleviated that problem, yes. But anyway, so that's kind of like a mix of the tactics around water.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, too, just hearing you talk through that. Number one, you've got the ladies, the quotation mark ladies down there, so that's a little bit of bait. They're on water, which that buck may want to have a drink. Also, water can be a dangerous place to get ambushed. That's why we use it ourselves sometimes.
Right.
Now they're like confidence decoys. Oh, they've already given me the all clear. They're relaxed. They're by the water. Like, he saw you and knew something was up. But also, like, he had conflicting information. He's like, no, I guess it's okay. And then,
yeah, sitting over water or in a blind actually works really, really well for antelope, because once they get used to things their environment very easily. You don't have to put it out there for very long, a couple days, and they're like, oh, because they have no other choice for water.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Anything that I'm trying to think of anything we haven't covered talking about these things.
We talked about trophy judging. I'll walk through that a little bit about trophy a little bit more. So there's six measurements on an antelope, and we call it the rules of 7. And so you want 6-inch or 7-inch bases. You want 5 or 6-inch second measurement, which is right below the prong. You want a 6-inch prong, and then you want a 4-inch measurement above the prong and 3-inch closer to the top, and then you want it at least 14 inches long, and it measures from the outside all the way to the tip of the curl. And if you both of those, you'll have an 80 plus inch antelope. Now, you go, well, how do I do that in the field? Well, here's how you do it. Like I said, the eye is the mass. And if you have that and it looks like he's got 2 baseball bats on his head, shoot him.
Okay.
Because you'll see tons and tons of 13-inch, 70-inch antelope, and then he will stand out significantly. There will be no question. If you're having to guess, don't shoot him unless you're just out to shoot a buck.
Right. And I think, that's the beauty of antelope hunting too, is like you don't have to be going for, or it's really any hunting, right?
Yeah.
But you can make the hunt what you want it. But I think you nailed one of the biggest things is you are likely going to be seeing a lot of animals and you're like, I don't know, they all kind of look the same. Well, you look at all those animals until you find that one that doesn't look like all the other ones.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's a big, like I equate animals somewhat akin to bears. You could see, you're like, oh, I don't know, it's a bear. Like, yeah, that's a bear, that's a bear, that's a bear. And they're like, that's a big bear.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's a big one because it's a big one.
Yeah.
Because he's roly-polying.
Right.
If you have to wonder if it's big enough, it's probably not big enough,
Right.
as a general rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm curious real quick, is because I love the cartridge talks that you guys do. I listen to a lot of your guys' podcasts, and I love you and Ryan going back and forth on different things. So what's your go-to? We've been talking a lot about archery. Let's switch to the rifle side. What's your go-to caliber and load for antelope?
Oh, I mean, 300 WSM. Probably pushing anything from a 165 to a 200. Yeah. I mean, isn't that the answer for everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Bigger, better, right?
I mean, so it can and has worked for me. I'll say that. Like I said, I haven't rifle hunted antelope a lot. If I was going today, and because I have a handful more rifles, I'd say, boy, one of the beautiful things about these critters is they're not huge,
right.
And so it doesn't take a ton to get the job done. If you told me to go out, I mean, I'd probably use a 6.5 Creed, a 6 Creed, even a 6mm arc, perhaps. But I mean, I'd also just use whatever. If I had an accurate 270 or .6, that was my general big game rifle, I'd probably be completely comfortable with that as well.
Sure.
Well, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I love my 6.5 Creedmoor, but that gun, I've shot so many animals with it. It's perfect because it's light. It doesn't tear them up too much. And I'm not shooting. People think the antelope. You're like, good God, how do you get close enough to shoot one? Well, if you're shooting them under 300 yards, which I try not to shoot anything over 400. That's like my personal thing. The 6.5 Creedmoor is perfect for that because you're not losing a lot of bullet drop in that shorter distance, and the weights, the 143. I shoot 143 ELDXs, Hornadies, and that's the perfect caliber for an antelope because you're looking at an animal that's the size of a Labrador dog.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not huge.
I mean, on average, what would an average buck weigh on the hoof? Do you think?
80 pounds.
I think so.
90 pounds. Now in Wyoming, where we are, it's funny. You go to Arizona, and they'll be 60 pounds. Arizona, northern or southern Colorado. You come up where we live, and I think it's just like whitetail. Come up where we live, and our antelope are 110.
Right.
A big buck's like 110, 115 pounds. But
and it even depends on what side of the state.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
mountain bucks mountain antelope bucks that migrate down just like a mule deer would. They're tremendously bigger animals.
Yeah, their head's a third bigger. Yeah. Their skull is a third bigger.
Because around our office, we because of where we live, every year there's some guys that are hunting more in that say Gillette, Casper area, and other people that are hunting more by Cody, Wyoming, or Lander or something. And you're talking about two different. If you put them right next to each other, those are two different animals. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable.
I have a really cool, I call it my antelope tree, and it's this thing that Skull Hooker made that you can. It's like a post, and then it has a bunch of skull hookers all the way around it, and I have antelope skulls on it, just Euroed. It looks really cool because it's black and they're black, and I love antelope Euros. I think that's the coolest mount because their skull's white and their horns are black. It's very contrast. But I have a bunch of Colorado bucks. I have a bunch of Wyoming bucks, and I have a Montana buck on there. And I can tell which one's which just by the size of their skull, and which makes it also difficult to judge, because our antelope, their eyes are about 20% bigger than in Colorado.
Oh, wild.
You go to Colorado, southern Colorado where we hunt. I can shoot an antelope and I can pick the thing up with one arm and walk off with it. That's how small they are. Man. In our antelope, where I hunt here there in Wyoming, it's a 2-person job to get one in the back to pick up.
Right. It's kind of like looking at if you compare a lot of Colorado, again, depending on what part of the state they're in, but Colorado mule deer, their skulls are wider, their tails are longer, their tails are wider, generally bigger bodied. Their heads are just overall bigger. Like everything's bigger. Their antlers on average are bigger. Yep. They have more mass. Entries into Boone and Crockett Records book, and it's just a genetic. Jim Heffelfinger and people that he works with in universities and stuff for research, they tried to set out once for all to determine how many subspecies genetically there were of mule deer, and everybody thought they're going to prove for sure those Colorado deer are different subspecies. Nope. According to what they found, there wasn't. It is genetics of that individual population, forage, what they're eating, all that over time has made them seem quite a bit different. And it's the same thing with antelope.
I mean, I've shot a couple Colorado mule deer, and neither of which horn-wise were like, giants, right? I think probably the biggest one was, I don't know, mid-50s, maybe 60 or something like that. I would have thought I killed a cow elk.
Yeah, they're big bodies.
The body size.
Yeah,
it was just astounding.
Yeah, big bodies. And the antelope do the same thing. Whitetail deer, same thing. The body size of Alberta buck that we shot last year are way different than the whitetails that we shot in Texas. They're just different. Same species, just, they're adapting to their environment.
Yep. So I'd say regardless of the size of your antelope, though, the aforementioned cartridges would get the job done handily on any of them. But going back to the body size and what makes them so great, whether you're an experienced hunter or first-time Western hunter, they're not huge. If you are hunting solo and you've got a good backpack and you do, shoot one a little bit further back in, maybe you can't get to get the truck to it for a handful of reasons. They're not as much to deal with. It's not like you're taking care of an elk. So you can get that animal out. You can get it out in short order in hot weather. So there's a lot of pluses that eliminate some of the logistics that come with other hunts. And number one, that just makes it more pleasant. If you're like, yeah, dude, let's one trip this thing and get it out of here and get it cooled off. And then also, like, if you're new to some of that stuff, it's just a little bit easier when you're doing some of that stuff for the first time. Yeah,
it's a good Western hunt to cut your teeth on if you're not used to doing that, or if you live out west but maybe you just got into hunting for the first time. They're just fun animals, period. And like we joke around all the time that I love the intensity of high country mule deer hunting early and elk hunting during the rut and all that. And it's just it's go time. But man, there's something fun about a chill antelope hunt. And in fact, even a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Alaska on a pretty major butt kicker DIY float hunt. It was really fun, but it was hard. And you're 13 days where you're just wet. You're in waders and it's cold. And I remember we got to, I think it was day 12 or 13. I looked at my buddy and I said, I have never wanted a 95-degree dry antelope hunt so bad in my entire life as I do right now at this moment. And because usually I complain when it's too hot and we're hunting antelope. After that Alaska hunt, I'm like, this is all right. I like this antelope hunting stuff.
Yeah. Well, hey, talking a little bit about weather, it can be variable. Sometimes it's really nice, but I've hunted antelope in October where we got snow, we got some nasty rain. And it definitely, I guess this is I'd say for a first timer out at least in the country that I was in, it very much changed the context of the roads we were on.
Oh boy.
In fact, we just eventually pulled over so we wouldn't slide off the road and get permanently stuck. And we had to wait for it to dry out. So maybe because that's kind of like a cautionary thing, but I think it definitely warrants talking about.
And most of the terrain that antelope are on, we call it gumbo, and it's a really slick clay, and you put 7 drops on it, and it might not be only an inch thick, but you can't drive on it, and it is slicker than slick. But on the reverse side, the sun comes out and the wind blows, in about 15 minutes, it's dry again. Mm-hmm. But there's actually, talk about weather a little bit. Antelope are unique because they have that 8-power eye. They are more nervous when it's overcast because they can't see so well. And they rely, their number one defense or their number one sense is their eyesight.
Right.
And so if it's bluebeard, clear day, no wind, they're like, who gives a crap? I can see everything. But when the wind starts blowing a lot, they start getting nervous because everything's moving. And like Brandon said, they pick up on movement. And so everything's moving, so they're nervous. And then when it gets overcast and it's windy, everything's moving and they can't see. They're like crackheads. They don't sit down, they don't lay down. They're constantly moving, and if they see any movement, even if it's rue or not, they're gone.
And that's actually one thing that your dad talks about on old videos and his book and everything, is one of the Achilles heels of an antelope is that sunlight in their face.
Yes.
And so,
that's a great tip.
Man, I would say probably the best antelope tip I would suggest to anybody, and really with any species, especially antelope, hunt with the sun at your back if at all possible. And so, like one of the units that I hunt the most, I plan my day based on where the sun's at. And so we start on this side of the unit in the morning, and we work our way this way, and then about the time the sun's going down, we start hunting our way back. And it is a game changer.
In the morning, I drive on the highway as far east as the other side, and then I hunt with the sun on my back until noon. And here's the other thing. Middle of the day is hard with antelope because of heat waves. And I don't care what glass you have, heat waves are a problem. And
in fact, I mean, if you are seeing heat waves, part of that is because you have good glass.
Yeah, that's right.
You're seeing a physical thing.
Yeah, that's right. And so they're hard to hunt because they're hard to judge with heat waves. And it's a mirage. You might, they're just difficult. So we'll hunt with the sun at our back. We'll hunt west in the morning, middle of the day. Usually we'll go to town if it's close and go eat lunch and screw around until about 3 o'clock and then hunt east on our way back.
Well, and that midday stuff too, like I've tried to push through just because you want to make your time count in the field, right? It seems counterintuitive. Like I only have these many days on this hunt. I'm not going to take time off midday, even though it's not ideal. But anymore, it's almost worthless, especially archery hunting, to where that sun is beaming down on you. It looks like you have a beacon of light on you too. Yeah. So not only is it harder to see them, it makes it easier for them to see you. It's like there's a spotlight, like you're on a stage, and it's like, oh, look at that guy over there. That's cute.
Yeah, It's having the sun at your back morning and night it's a huge game changer for them.
And you mentioned the rain and the gumbo and how greasy it gets. From a safety standpoint, you don't want to be driving around, but also as sportsmen, we need to be very aware of whether it's private land, public land, whatever, that there are people who live out there, ranchers, that we can't be out there tearing up roads. It gives us a bad name as hunters. Sometimes there's walk-in access programs that the states have that if you're driving, if there's a 2-track or something that's, or a full-on gravel road that's open to go through the property, but it's been raining a lot and you're sliding all over and rutting up that road, they're probably going to pull their land out of that program and not do it anymore because it's a major headache for them and cost for them to fix that road after the season. And so it's just, and also for the agencies, like if you're on BLM land, you don't want to be tearing up that area either. So just some days you just got to shut her down. It sucks because you're out there and you only have a little bit of time, but it dries out fast, like you said.
Super fast.
So just usually, there's exceptions, but usually out west, you don't get a week of rain.
Right.
You might get a day, maybe part of a day. Just be patient. Just have lunch, take a nap, go back to town, wherever you're staying, and chill out, and then don't tear everything up. And so it's good for everybody else when you're out there too.
One of the other things I want to talk about is shooting. We talked a lot about archery. Let's talk about rifle shooting. Make sure if you're going to go out there that you can shoot in different positions. I know we came out to the Vortex and we did the hunting class, and we talked about, and we actually got to shoot rifles at different, off of backpacks and off of piles of lumber and off of a gate and all that stuff. Make sure you can shoot in different positions, because antelope hunting, a lot of that is flat and there's always grass and sagebrush. If you can only shoot prone, you're in trouble. It's going to be very unsuccessful. So practice at the range, practice out. If you have some public land, just practice shooting off of a tripod, off of sticks, off of, your tripods with the arc plate on it. It's a game changer, especially for antelope, because you can stand up and do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to do a shameless plug here too. You talked about, we got to go out to the Vortex shooting school and everything there a couple years ago. And, we've been doing this Western hunting thing our whole lives, and we've learned a lot from our dads. And there's, most of the shooting positions and stuff we knew, but there were a couple things that we were taught that now I've gone back and taught my kids. We've showed our other employees and coworkers and stuff at Eastman's that there are so many things that we learned both indoors and outdoors at that shooting school. I'd heard about it for a long time, and we finally got to come out and experience it, and it was very impressive. It was very well run. If anybody who's listening has a chance to go out and experience that, man, take advantage of that.
Shooting with a tripod where you're intertwined with the tripod on the back and using your hand to slide up and down, that is an absolute game changer. Absolute game changer.
Yeah. Stability is key to all shooting. That's what we're trying to achieve, whether we're, shooting prone or shooting standing or shooting off sticks or whatever. But that one that you mentioned, it's when you get it right, which it's a technique, but it's like incredibly simple, but you have to know how to do it. But the level of stability you get, I mean, you are rock solid.
It's like shooting off a bench.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
And it's so simple. And almost all of us have a tripod with, because we've got our spotting scope with, or we're videoing hunts. It's like, man, why not use that? Especially once you're, pushing your extended ranges a little bit.
Yeah. I agree with you. Kudos to the instructors we have at the Vortex Edge facility and the techniques that they teach, because they're on it. They know what they're doing. And it's, I'd say no matter who you are, you're going to pick something up that you take home. And like you said, now you're using it. Now you're teaching it. And not only are you, your kid's likely to be more successful, but you're making a better shot, and we all want to make as best a shot as we can, and that's important. So
and shooting is huge with antelope. Just the different positions and understanding wind drift, which rarely does the wind not blow, and so understanding what your comfortable range is in that wind, different positions, and understanding that antelope, if it's not perfect, don't take it. Just come back.
Yeah,
he'll be there probably again, unless he's one of those migrators.
And because antelope are smaller bodied animals than, say, a big mule deer or an elk, your room for error is a lot smaller too. On a big bull elk, you're shooting at a sheet of plywood. There's a lot of room for error for the most part. But on an antelope, man, maybe you think you're a good shooter at 500 yards. Maybe not on an antelope, though.
Sure.
Maybe you want to shorten that up just a little bit, because you just one little oops or a gust of wind or something, and pretty soon you got a disaster on your hands. So,
for sure. Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate it. Super fun. Antelope are super fun. They are just, when it comes to big game and pure fun, there's nothing quite like it. Like we said earlier in the podcast, they oftentimes get overlooked. They shouldn't. I'm talking to myself here. It seems like I always plan something. I'm like, oh, darn it, I didn't go antelope hunting again. When really it should be like that every year hunt. Probably for you guys, it's a little more every year. Being an out-of-stater, you got to pick and choose a little bit. But man, there's nothing quite like it. Like you guys were saying, they are just a incredibly unique, special animal, and they have a lot to offer. And I appreciate the tips that you guys offered up to help folks find some success while they go chase them. So
if you have other questions, check us out, eastmans.com. We got some learning stuff. We got obviously that book still in print, so you can get one of those.
But you can get it digitally too now.
Yep, you can get it digitally. And if you're struggling, and one of the things that I've heard just recently is that hunting out west is daunting. because of the tags and the draws and all that stuff. We have a tool, and on Eastmans.com is Tag Hub, and it'll help you walk through how to start your process and start, getting those points. Like you said, you had 3 points to draw that tag. Start buying those points, and then plan it with some buddies and come out and have and you can do it over a weekend. It's, minus drive time. You can do an antelope hunt in 3 days, easy, and have a lot of fun. So it's not a huge adventure.
Well, you can do that, and then what I've done in the past too is like if you end up you're like, hey, this is a big deal. We're going to plan on being out here for a week. In some ways, why wouldn't you? Right? You've made the time investment. You're going to an incredible place. Let's go. Well, maybe you and your buddies tag out in the first 2 or 3 days. Great. Go trout fishing, go upland bird hunting. That's another beautiful thing about that is if you guys finish up early, there's lots of other great opportunities to be had out there.
That's right. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks everybody for listening. Go out there and chase some antelope like I haven't been, and but hopefully I'll see you out in the field. So take care. Bye, everybody.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.